Protein synthesis occurs in 3 steps: initiation, elongation, and termination. Initiation involves the assembly of the mRNA, the 40S ribosomal subunit, and the initiator tRNA, which will almost always be the tRNA loaded with methionine. There are 3 different sites in the ribosome. The A site is where all aminoacyl tRNAs, or tRNAs that have amino acids on them, will first come. The only exception is for this first one for the start codon, which starts at the P site. Proteins called initiation factors are needed to put these 3 things together, and they use GTP as an energy source. Once the mRNA, tRNA, and 40S ribosomal subunit are assembled, the 60S ribosomal subunit joins the party, and the initiation factors leave. Now we can start the next phase called elongation. The P site is where the growing peptide will be, and the A site is where our next tRNA will come in, which has an anticodon that's complementary to the codon after the start codon on the mRNA. So which end of this mRNA is the 5' and which is the 3'? In this case, the left is 5' because that's the direction of the beginning of translation, and the right is the 3' end. After this tRNA has arrived, the ribosomal RNAs will catalyze a peptide bond formation between these 2 amino acids, and the amino acid that was in the P site will be set free from its tRNA. The last part of elongation is called translocation, and this is where the ribosome moves 3 nucleotides toward the 3' end of the mRNA, so the tRNA that's attached to the polypeptide ends up back at the P site. The A site is now temporarily empty, and the disconnected tRNA is in the E site, which you can think of as standing for empty or exit, since the tRNA is now free to go. This cycle will repeat while the ribosome goes all the way through the regular codons, but I won't show all that here in the interest of time, so let's pretend that this protein only has 2 amino acids. Eventually, the ribosome will reach the stop codon. This brings us to the last step in protein synthesis, which is termination. And as I mentioned earlier, the stop codon, which in this case might be UAA, is recognized by release factors, and the finished protein is released from the ribosome. Okay, so once again, what do you need to know about any of this as a clinician? Well, the most relevant part for your boards is drugs that target translation. The bacterial ribosome is different from the eukaryotic ribosome and has 30S and 50S subunits instead of 40 and 60. Since it's different, we can use drugs that target it specifically and have little or no effect on our ribosomes. For example, aminoglycosides inhibit initiation by binding the 30S subunit, chloramphenicol inhibits the peptidyltransferase activity of the 50S subunit, and macrolides prevent the release of a tRNA that has already donated an amino acid, all of which prevent protein translation and therefore kill the cell. These are discussed in more detail in the microbiology chapter. The first tRNA used in protein synthesis, which carries methionine, will enter the ribosome and go to the A, P, or E site. The first tRNA will go to the P site, which is an exception, since all subsequent tRNAs will start in the A site, and only move to the P site after their amino acid has been added to the growing polypeptide.